Taichiblue Studios.
Music paint.
This is for my out there, for my instrumentalists out there, all my music painters, my motif users. I'm going to talk a little bit about, on this a method of getting physical modeling sounds into the motif. Right? We want to be able to take advantage of some physical modeling synthesizers out there. There's a couple good ones that I use, the SWAM models I use, and the Logic Pro Sculpture I use. And in situations where I need very particular articulations from acoustic instruments, I will go to physical modeling synthesis. A lot of times that the articulations are already available on my motif, or I can play them. I can replicate them myself some way. But sometimes I'm looking for a particular articulation and it's not there, or it's maybe not something that's I can readily play. And so I will go to physical modeling and get the articulation that I want. Like in this particular case, I have my motif has 2 solo violins, and I've got 2 solo violas, and 2 solo cello. And they have pretty good timbres, they have pretty good legato, they got pretty good spiccato and pizzicato, but I'm looking for bow release sounds. And the original sound designers on the motif, they weren't focusing on bow release articulations. And they can't know. The original designers can't know everything. And folks, please keep this in mind. Those presets, when you're talking about a synthesizer, those presets are just meant to get you started. They're meant to give you some indication of, what the instrument can do. There's no way that the sound designers can know all of the ways you want to use the synthesizer and all of the sounds that you might possibly use. So they give you something to get you started. Also on the motif, we have our 8 elements, and we have our XA control, and we have our element groups. If you do a deep dive into the motif, you'll find out that those are not used probably in the way that you would use them. So when you're designing your own sounds and your own timbre, you're going to want to use those XA control differently than how the original sound designers used it, and you're going to use the element groups differently. So just kind of keep that in mind. And in my case, I wanted to have a bow off release, and so if I'm going through my violin solo, my first violin solo, I've got on violin 1, I've got 8 elements as in that solo, and it's pretty good. Each element has a good sound, like here on element 4. This is a violin string. If you notice there, it's a stereo. That little minus sign means that it's detuned a little bit. And you hear that sound when you use the XA control. Notice the AF1 on. When that's on, then you can hear what this sounds like. And so I've soloed this right here, so you can hear each of these as I'm kind of playing through them to give you an idea. Element 5 here was a solo combi stereo. It's offset a little bit in terms of time, the timing from the start of the other strings. And so you have to keep that in mind too. Yamaha had their own naming conventions for these things. And this one also plays when the AF1 button is on under XA control. And notice that they've signed all of these to element group 1. you know. And here's element number 6. This is what it sounds like. You know, it has a note limit of from C2 to F sharp 2. So take a look at what what's going on there. And AF1, and it's in element group 1. So like I said, I'm going to use this XA control differently than how the original designers did it for this particular one. And if we look here for element 7, this one, this timbre, this sample right here doesn't have vibrato on the violin. That's useful. A lot of the violin samples assume some kind of vibrato. This is just a dry sample, and sometimes we need that dry sample. But notice this works with AF2 when AF2 is on. It's element group 1, and AF2 is what's going on here. And so, you know, you kind of keep that in mind, that the sounds are per each element are controlled by XA control. When you hear them, what range they play in, and the original designers may have, you know, there's just no way that they could know what you're going to need, right? And notice here I got element 8 on this, and it's a spiccato sound. So this is what the spiccato sounds like, a nice solo spiccato sound. And so generally this is a beautiful timbre on the Motif, and has the kind of sound that I'm looking for the most part, but it's missing some things, right? And so and what it's missing is really determined by the particular composition I'm working on. I'm working on a song right now, something called Free Gadgets, and it needs that bow release, and it doesn't have that. And also notice how I can control all of the levels of those elements with my faders here. So that's what I'm trying to demonstrate. So it doesn't have the bow release that I want, but all of the other sounds are pretty good. And so in this case, violin solo 1, I can't really modify this because it's really using all 8 elements. Okay, and so the candidate that I want to use is violin solo 2. If you look here with the 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can see there that it only uses 4 elements, and so 4 of the elements are free. And so I can go in and I can get some physical modeling articulations. I can copy this violin solo 2 to my own user, to one of my user voices, and then I can easily modify it to get. It has a beautiful sound. I can easily modify it to get what I want to get from it. Right, so it has element 1 is on. Notice how they've done the XA control. All the AF buttons are off, and we can hear this violin right, and it's also detuned a little bit. Right, element 2, all of the AFs are off, and it's a solo combi right, and it's a little detuned. That, you know, the detuning process or offsets gives you a nicer, more authentic kind of articulation. And so element 1, 2, 3, and 4 are used, but the other ones aren't. So I'm going to take some sounds from this S.W.A.M violin, and these S.W.A.M violins, they sound good. Okay, as a matter of fact, all of the physical models on S.W.A.M, they excel where you're dealing with articulations. They generally they do a pretty good job on articulations for the acoustic instruments. And so in the case of like your Motif, you got some beautiful timbres. We all have beautiful timbres. Our saxes, our flutes, our violins and cellos and bassoons and all of those instruments have beautiful timbre, but some of the articulations were not sampled. Like I said, there's no way that the sound designers could know every articulation you would use, and so they gave us the ones that are most commonly used. But if we're in a situation where we need timbres, we need articulations and timbre that wasn't captured, and we can't like make it using the filters and the effects and the LFOs and envelopes, if we can't program it, this physical modeling is a real good choice. And I tend not to recommend instruments that I don't use, software instruments that I don't use. I use, for physical modeling, I use the SWAM instruments. I see that has a beautiful the timbre to that. I use the SWAM instruments, and I use the Logic Pro Sculpture for physical modeling. Sometimes I'll combine those two, to get the whatever the articulation that I'm looking for. And most of the time it's articulation, because the actual timbres and sounds and the bass sounds that come with the Motif, those are very good. Those are very high quality. In most cases, they're giving me exactly what I want, and with a little programming, I can get the other stuff. Like, listen to this. Yeah, that's just good. It's a legitimate sound there. But there are times, like I said, I'm missing some articulations, and so that's the time when I go for the, I will use SWAM physical modeling, or I will use the Logic Pro physical modeling. And I only use those largely in the sound design process. So when I'm designing a timbre, or coming up with the sounds that I need, and if I come up short some kind of way, which is rare on the Motif, I'm normally able to get whatever it is that I'm looking for. I will go to a physical modeling instrument, and I will get the articulations. And the goal here is to sample that articulation, right? I don't just leave the articulation in the physical model. My goal is to get the articulation, record it, and make it a Motif element. In this case, I wanted bow release. I wanted the bow release sound, and you can tell if you look here on the SWAM model here, you can see the string release and the bow release there. I want the bow release model articulation, and I want to record that and have it as an element on the Motif, and I'm going to use the note off articulation. So when note off is activated at XA control, I will be able to activate the bow release sample. So that's going to be my goal, and I'm recording I'm going to sample just the open strings on the cello, right? Each of those cello open strings, each string has its own unique kind of timbre to it. There's a lot of different ways of going about sampling a cello, but I just get the open strings here, right? The C, the G, the D, and the A. That's what I'm going after, and that way I'll get that open string, and then I will stretch out extrapolate the sample from there, and I'll end up with a pretty good sound at the end of the day. In terms of capturing that articulation, so I will capture articulation with each of those open strings, and then I will take and extend each open string up until the next open string sample. So I'll show you all what I mean here with that in a minute. Okay, and so the point of this is to capture these bow off the string release sound. Even though I'm recording the entire bow stroke, at the end of the day, I'm really only interested in what it sounds like when there's a bow release. So I'm going to end up cutting off all of the regular sample and just retain just the portion of the sample where I'm getting that bow off sound, that bow release sound. And that's I'm going to take that and I'm going to sample that articulation and save it. And I'm going to use it with the cello. I'm going to use it with the violin. You know, I'll be able to mess with the pitch and I can make it be able to fit with actually any string instrument. And in fact, this bow off release sound, I can use it any kind of way I want on the Motif, as you can use any element for anything. You can mix, you know, if you want to mix a flute with glass, with a piece of wood and the sound of rubber and make that a voice, you can. And so if I want to use this string release with a drum sound and a kalimba or something, there's nothing to stop me from doing that. And there are times that I do use things in unusual ways to get to the sound that my song needs. And in this case, it desperately needs a bow release. There's a portion that I'm doing with some cellos, and I need that bow release, and so I wanted to sample it and get a very authentic one. And the SWAM instruments are really good for that. So I'm going to get that sample, and then I'm going to add it to the cello 2, my viola 2 or my cello 2 sample on the Motif. Right, that's the plan. And you're going to get a chance to see what that looks like at the end of the day. That's pretty nice. How that works. It ends up turning out to be pretty good. So I got I did the samples, and I've got, if you notice here, I've got C, G, D, A, F, and then a C, right? So I sampled all of these the strings that I wanted. So this makes up the key bank for this SWAM sample. Okay. And so I want to, at this point, go through and make sure that I got a pretty good sound. And I tend to listen to these samples. I'll listen to them through my headphones. I just use Sennheisers, I use some of the basic Sennheiser headphones. That's what I use. And I listen to them through my monitors as well, just to get a sense of whether my sample caught, whether I was able to get the sound that I thought I was getting. So I listened to them in two ways. And before I cut off the main portion of that sample so that I can just get the bow release, I'm going to make a copy right here, and I'm going to store my copy in waveform 2. That way, if any of my sample chopping, if I mess something up or I don't get enough, I'll have the original 5-string sample that I made, and I won't have to sample it all over again. So that's the idea of making the sample. And so now I'm going to basically modify the copy of that key bank. And what I want to do is I want to go through and I want to normalize each of those samples. So that normalization process, what it really is trying to do is give me a pretty good, nice loud signal, nice loud volume. I know that I recorded it at the same volume for all of the strings, but I just want to make sure I got a nice strong sample here for each of the 5 strings. Well, 4 strings, but I made 5 samples. And so I'm going to normalize each one of those. And I kept the velocities the same. And so it's not like I changed the velocity of any of those. I kept the velocities the same and the range is the same at at the point of me normalizing these samples, right? And so that's the thing. I didn't want to chop the samples or change the ranges and then do the normalization. The best way to go after this is to do the normalization first, okay, and then make your copy, and then normalize all of the samples on the copy, and then at that point you're going to start looking at whether you're going to start, how do you want to chop things up or not, right? And if I decided to in some way keep the entire sample for the open strings on the cello, the SWAM cello, I could always just create a complete SWAM cello instrument, because I've got those 5 samples, and I can just extend those 5 samples over the range, into a cello range. So I'm good there in case I wanted to actually use the entire sample. In this case, though, I just want the bow release. Okay, so I'm going through the normalization process to grab that, and we could do that on the Motif. Really, since it has such an extensive range of instruments and sounds and timbres, I rarely have to sample anything, because in most cases the bass sound that I need, the source sound that I need is there, and if it's not exactly what I need, I have all the synthesis power that I need inside the Motif to allow me to change and manipulate the waveforms that are there for me to get my desired result. But in those rare cases where I can't, I'm missing some kind of articulation, like in this situation where I'm missing a bow release sound, and it's a very particular thing. And I imagine I could probably work at, put enough effort into a combination of other sounds and get close. But the sample here allowed me to get exactly what I was after. And so if you look at this sample here, the entire sample is here, but I really only want a small piece of it. Right as it's tapering off at the end here, I'm going to move my endpoint, so I'm going to get rid of the silence at the very end. I don't want that, right? I get rid of. Okay, I move it right up to the get right to the edge there. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so I can tighten this up a little bit more. Okay, and so I'm moving my endpoint, and yeah, that's getting pretty close. Yeah, that's pretty close to what I want. Now what I want to do is move my start point so that I'm capturing just as the bow is being taken off the string, and the sound that occurs as it's starting to diminish. And so this little piece right here is really all I want. So I captured the entire bow stroke, but in reality, I only want this this little small piece, right? And so I'm going to zoom in on that, and I'm going to extract just this piece right here, right? And that's it. That's the bow release sound. And I'm going to okay. And I know it sounds funny here, but I'm going to grab that piece of each sample for each of those 5 key bake sounds that I made, right? I'm going to grab that for each of the 5 key bake sounds. Okay, and then that's how I'm going to get that. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to add them to the actual violin, the cello voice that I want to use the sample with, right? So you kind of hear as I'm adding this to my cello, right? And the trick to this at the end of the day is to mess with I'm going to assign the sound, my little sample, to the element, to a free element in the copy of one of the voices like I said, of my cello 2 voice. I'm going to assign that sample, just that bow release sample, to one of the elements. And then I'm going to take the group, the XA control for that element, and I'm going to set it to key off, so that it's only going to, you're only going to hear that sample when I do the key off sound. Okay, when I take the key off, MIDI message occurs. That's when you'll actually hear that sound, right? And in order to pull that off, what you end up doing is you get that sound, you put it in there, and what I have to play with at the end of the day is going to be the attack and the envelope of that little bow release sound. Get it to match and to work with the the violin or the cello to the existing sound. It's all about making sure that the attack is right, the volume is right. So if we look here, you can see the envelopes, the shape of the envelopes here, and we can quickly see what we're going to do with this, the attack. You can see how I might change the attack. You see how that envelope looks there, right? We can modify that a little bit. Okay. Changing the changing the filter a little bit. And so this is like a trial and error process. It's a trial and error process. You know, and you play it and you listen to it. Yeah. Okay, and this is what it sounds like. And I haven't really started messing with my bow off or my string release sound just yet. I'm messing with what's here to see what's kind of going on with this this cello solo instrument right now. Okay, and we're in the this is the Motif XF editor. Okay, so a lot of times, if I'm doing really detail-oriented sound design or voice manipulation, I'll jump into this editor. It makes things easier sometimes, right? So it's a nice editor to have. You can see the parameters, all of the parameters, at the same time. That's one of the advantages for this using this editor. It lets you see more of the parameters on the screen at the same time. Working actually on the Motif instrument is pretty nice too. It's got a pretty big screen, and so there are times that I just use that as well. But if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of detail oriented manipulation, and I might want to see what multiple envelopes look like at the same time, like the envelope window will actually show you the pitch envelope and the filter envelope and the amplifier envelope at the same time. You can see what they are. There's an advantage to that sometimes. Okay, I can see what my control matrix is. Here it all is. I can see what my curves look like for each of the controller set. And so that's kind of clear. I can see what's manipulating, what's controlling what all on one screen. That can be useful, right? I changed that curve there. Okay. Yeah. So it's got a good sound. There's got a lot of raw potential there to end up coming up with the sound that I'm trying to get to. Yeah, that sounds, yeah. See, the Motif has good sounds, good basic sounds, and it's up to you as a designer. You're deciding what it's going to sound like inside of your mix or with the rest of the ensemble. Okay, a lot of times when someone is showing you some sound, they will show you that sound or that timbre in isolation, but the real kicker here is what this thing is going to sound like once the rest of the ensemble starts to play. And so the sound design process, I know what my target is. I know where I'm going to have this cello sound sit in the rest of my ensemble, and so I know what it is I'm looking for. So as I'm listening to this timbre, it's I'm getting pretty pumped, because I know it's going to give me exactly the mood and the effect I was going for in my song, right? And so here I can start to start making some decisions on what instrument I'm going to actually modify here. And then I want to grab this, let's say I can look at the violin here, my violin 2. And notice it has 4 elements, and element 5 is where I would actually place my string release sample. So I'll go down here to my string release sample. You can see there it is right there. I grab it, and so now that's been assigned to element number 5. Okay, at the moment I'm playing and element 5 is not turned on. You can see element 1, 2, 3, and 4 are on, and so this is what it sounds like without the bow release being assigned to it. And now I turn it on. This is kind of what you hear with the this sample being included, and you can see here the envelope, right? Now ultimately I want this thing to be in its own group. I want to put it in its own group, and I only want to hear the bow release on the key off. So once I take my hands off the key, that's when I want this sample to sound. Now at this point, what I'm up to do, what I have to do, is go through the trial and error to get this to get the sound I'm looking for. So I'm immediately going to take this decay thing down. I'm going to play with the attack a little bit here. I slow that attack down a little bit. Right, and that's getting a little closer to what I'm looking for. Yeah, just to change that a wee bit. Yeah, getting closer, a lot closer. See, this is only, element 5 is only sounding when the keys are off, when I take my hand off the key, and elements 1 through 4 are sounding otherwise. So okay, here we go, playing with the attack here a little bit. Okay, yeah, it's getting closer. Yeah, it's getting closer. And when I'm done here, I'm not going to go through the whole the finishing process here in this video, because it might take me another 15 or 20 minutes just to, fine tune exactly, what I'm listening for. And then at some point I'm going to play the song. I'm going to put this instrument with the rest of the ensemble. But I'm still working on this song, and I'm not trying to release it just yet. So I'll have to share the ensemble sound with you at a later time. This is getting close to what I wanted, right? This sound, it's actually improved the violin solo 2 for the Motif by adding this articulation. They didn't have it. It wasn't one of the articulations that was a part of this set. So it had 4 elements. I now have 5 elements to that. And I could have, there's 8 elements per sound. So I could clearly add a couple more if I wanted to. If there was some other, if I wanted to add a pluck or something to this, a more pronounced pluck or pizzicato, I could to this, And so this is going to be saved as a user voice. And that way I can modify it and change and do anything I want with it, right? This is sounding pretty good right here. This is getting close to what I need for my song. And that's what this is all about. It's just when it comes down to those presets, please keep that in mind on the Motif. And that goes for probably any of these music production synthesizers or workspace or workstation synthesizers that have these 2,000, 3,000 sounds or whatever it is. Those are really placeholders. They get you started, they give you a bass line to work from, but it's a synthesizer, and the point of the synthesizer is to give you, as the instrumentalist, the power to change and make the sounds what you need to make them. I mean, if you don't need to do that, right? If you're not in a situation, listen to that. That's getting the ballpark. If you're in a situation where you don't need to change the sounds and you don't need to design sounds from scratch, then you can just get a regular keyboard, right? I use the physical modeling, the Logic Sculptor. So either SWAM or Logic Sculptor, and I'll sample those directly into my Motif, like I did in this case, to augment some acoustic capability, right? So I bring it in through audio in, and in a lot of cases I'll take it straight to the element from there. But sometimes I'll bring it in master mode, right? I may connect to these synthesizers in master mode, and I might want to combine the sound with something else, and that's already on the Motif, and then resample it, right, with using an integrated sampler. All right, so that's the plan, and then make it a Motif element. So in all cases, the goal is to end up as a Motif element, to get the sound out of these synthesizers and into the Motif, and that's what I go for. Right, the Motif is my primary music production synthesizer. It's my principal synthesizer. Whenever I use any other kind of synthesizer, my Motif is the master principal synthesizer, and the other synthesizers are playing second and third to the Motif. So in general, if I need some kind of articulation, special articulation, that's usually an acoustic thing, I will use physical modeling. I will use the Logic Pro Sculpture, or I'll use the SWAM. I'll use the SWAM synthesizers, right? Now, if I don't need some particular acoustic articulation, I can usually create that unusual sound with some combination of elements that are already on the Motif. And I do a lot of sound design, and the Motif is able to take me through in 99.99999% of the times. Here was one of the cases where I actually needed a bow-off release. And so, look, I'm throwing this out there. I went a little bit longer than I planned to do today. I'm going to drill down on this a little bit later and show how the SWAM and the sculpture can be used together sometimes to get you to physical modeling, right? And so, the sample synthesis that's on the Motif is incredibly powerful. And probably once I add physical modeling sampling to it, that gives me as a complete synthesis capability as I would ever need. I know others have other workflows and use other technologies, but sample synthesis plus physical modeling synthesis gets me anywhere I'm trying to get to. So hopefully this is going to help some of you out there that are trying to figure out how you might get integrate physical modeling with the Motif. I can recommend from personal experience the SWAM instrument and the sculpture instrument. Those are very good. They're very flexible. They give you a great deal of control over the timbre, the nuances of the timbre and articulations, and they can get you where you go. And they're easy to sample on the Motif. You use the integrated sampling sequencer. They get you there. Okay, for my instrumentalists and music painters, see you cats next time.
Thank you.